Hello, everybody. We are live. Um, I believe we're live anyway. Um, I hope everyone is doing well. Today, I will be reviewing a very long interview. It'll be the whole stream. I don't know that we'll be reviewing all of it, actually. We'll probably be skipping around. Um, because what we'll be doing is interview prep for interviewing Orrin McIntyre, who is a host at The Blaze. He wrote a book called The Total State, which, if you have not read, you need to. It's very, very good. I read it when it came out. Um, he recently engaged in a debate with Joel Berry, who is I believe, I can double check this, but I believe he's the editor in chief of the Babylon Bee, managing editor of the Babylon Bee. And Joel and Orrin recently went on Tim Pool's Culture War show to debate the MAGA Civil War, which effectively turned into a debate about no enemies to the right, which I have covered. I covered that on which episode? It was either episode 5. I covered that on episode 5 of the Saturday Night Sanity Revolt. The idea of no enemies to the right, for those who aren't familiar. I covered that on episode 5. But effectively what it is the principle that you shouldn't have enemies to your right. And that having enemies to your right is unproductive and bad for the right in general. So the debate on Tim Pool's show turned into kind of a debate about that. So we'll be watching some clips from this. I'll be double speeding through it. I've already seen all of it. Obviously, I've seen all of it twice. I watched it through twice today. But if you did not see... Oh, I need to connect the stream deck so I can change scenes better. If you did not see, I asked Orrin McIntyre, one of the debaters, if I could interview him and do a debate breakdown with him about this episode, this show he did. And he said that he would be willing to do it with me. So that's amazing. I'm super pleased. I really appreciate that because he has no reason to give me the time of day. So I really appreciate that he's willing to come on and discuss that with me. So we'll be watching the debate, most of it. Well, not most of it. We'll be watching through the debate. And then we'll be referencing some... We'll mostly be looking at Orrin's points because Orrin wanted to make some points that he didn't get to make for one reason or another. So we'll be going through kind of and trying to just take some notes, write some stuff down, get some stuff prepped for interviewing Orrin. Yeah, that's the plan for tonight. I don't think anybody will be joining us tonight. I extended a couple invitations, but I don't know that anybody will be joining us. So I think it'll just be us watching it. If somebody wants to join us, we'll figure it out. When we will cross that bridge when we get there. Just double check. Yeah, okay. Make sure I was live because I wasn't seeing it. I wasn't seeing it on my YouTube studio for some reason. So, yeah, that's the plan for tonight, is to do interview prep. So we'll be watching the interview, and then we'll be focusing on Orrin's points and a couple times on some things Joel said that I thought were interesting in some interesting ways, interesting in some interesting ways, interesting in some weird ways. Um, might reference some books. We've got some books over on the desk. You guys know we always have books on the desk. Um, y'all know we always have the books on the desk. Books on the desk tonight. Quadragesimo Anno, the little yellow edition of Quadragesimo. Everybody's got a couple of the little yellow edition encyclicals laying around the house. All the Catholics have them. It's a Catholic thing. I know y'all got them. I got one. I got a lot of them. I think I have 3 or 4 of them. Probably my favorite political book right now, which I tell you guys to read probably once a week. The Church Against the State by Andrew Willard Jones. And then for additional reference, if need be tonight, we will be breaking out Word on Fire's Catholic Social Teaching Collection, which, if you are just starting to look into CST, Catholic Social Teaching, or Catholic Politics, this is a great place to start if you have an adult reading level, which, no shame if you don't, happens to all of us, you know. We all, there's some people who have high reading levels and some people who don't. And no shame. We're not all called to be able to understand everything. So, is my stream? Why is my Twitch? I can't get Twitch to work, which is frustrating. But yeah, there's some stuff in here. It's pretty dense in some parts. I recommend this. If you, I would recommend this. This is a great book. If you don't own it, it's a great book to own if you just want it for reference, honestly. Even if you're not planning to read it cover to cover, this is a great book to own for reference because it's got not all, but most, it's got all of the major social encyclicals and then excerpts from some of the less well-known ones. My one complaint with it is that it does not have the full text of Quadragesimo, which is why we have the little yellow one with us tonight. And I think Quadragesimo is phenomenal. I think it's underrated, actually. It's really odd. What is going on here? Let me double check. What is going on? Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. Well, there we go. It's working. So that's what we'll be doing tonight. If anybody decides to join, that'd be great, but we will just keep going. So, that's the plan. So let's get right into it. If you guys have questions, say hi in the chat. I see Gary is here. How you doing, Gary? But if you guys have questions or comments on the video while we're watching it, while we're going, please let me know. I would love to review that stuff with y'all. Yeah. So. There we go. Anyway. Oh, no, I need to do it this way. That's right. Okay. Let's get going. I want to start reading these. These are great. These are all great places to start. I think Quadragesimo is really underrated. I mean, before we get into the interview and the reaction, I just want to stress that I really think Quadragesimo is underrated. People talk about Rerum, and they talk about Rerum, and they talk about Centesimus. They talk about Dignitatis. and those are all obviously phenomenal, and everybody talks about them for a reason, you know. But Quadragesimo is just, it's like, I don't even know what to compare it to. Quadragesimo is just like so good, and because all of the others are so important and broke open so much more like really essential stuff that's kind of been forgotten. Quadragesimo kind of gets forgotten itself and left behind, and but it is, I mean, just great, um, you know, um, and the prose, some of the prose with which it's written is just beautiful. Rerum Novarum completely overthrew those tottering tenets of liberalism which had long hampered effective interference by the government. It prevailed upon the peoples themselves to develop their social policy more intensely and on truer lines, and encouraged the elite among Catholics to give such efficacious assistance to rulers of the state that in legislative assemblies they were not infrequently the foremost advocates of new policy. So, yeah, I mean, it's just very, very good, shockingly good. And I would encourage everybody to try to get your hands. If you ever want to read an encyclical, you could probably go to your local like Catholic bookstore, and just like pick up, the little yellow ones or the little blue ones. You could definitely find them. It is Quadragesimo Anno. There you go. So, let's get into watching this video, though. Yo, what's up, Danny? Let's turn up the speed, too.
MAGA in Civil War. Gives me an excuse to say Civil War, not in the context of people killing each other, just in the more political context. And there's been a big debate going on for some time. There's some animosity between prominent conservative personalities and each other and large organizations. And this has bubbled up into the realms of conspiracy theory as well as just mainstream debate over the direction the conservative movement should be going. Now, Donald Trump still has several years left, and he still is basically a unifying force. But what happens when he goes? Will the right stick together despite disparate ideologies coming together under Trump? Because, well, let's be honest, the left has gone and thus we have troll in. So how about we'll start here with good Sir Joel. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Joel Berry. I'm the managing editor of the Babylon Bee and chief troll in Aaron McIntyre's comment section on Twitter. So,
well, right on. And Aaron McIntyre.
Hey, I'm Aaron McIntyre. I host a show on Blaze TV or McIntyre Show. Catch it on YouTube, Rumble, all those places.
Let's just real quick, but an elevator pitch. What is the debate? What's the argument?
Well, I guess first of all, I think it's a debate worth having, and a debate worth having in the open. And I think it's encouraging that we're having this debate. It's a sign that we've kind of won in one sense. We've made it to level 2. The only interesting conversations being had right now are on the right, between the right and other factions of the right. And we're at this point where we kind of have to define who we are and who we're not, what our vision for the future is. We've been defined so long by what we're against, and that's really easy. And now we have to start kind of being defined by what we're for.
And so within that, there's a bunch of different issues. There are many different issues. Yeah. And so the debate is basically what is the identity of the right moving forward. I think that's that way to put it.
I think so. Do
you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think obviously, as Joel said, what was holding us together was fighting the left. And as soon as you get done, the nature of coalitional politics is the minute you come into power, then you decide what part of the coalition is going to be driving this thing. And I think there's a lot of clashes that were unresolved, even though Trump took power and unified in a lot of ways. Foreign policy, a lot of American identity, issues of nationalism. These things were not completely addressed, and so now they have to be worked through in one way or another, and that's what you're seeing play itself out.
Right on. So before we get started, we do have a great sponsor. It is Bearskin.
So there's something really interesting there. I think I want to put this in the notes, actually. So let's make notes. How do we want to do notes? Maybe we just have to do a text document because I'm afraid of showing you guys things accidentally. I'm afraid of accidentally showing you guys things, and I'm not going to lie about that. How do we want to do these notes so they can be on screen? I know what we'll do. We'll pop Obsidian open. We'll pop Obsidian up. just get get Obsidian out here. Create new note. Ooh, my hair looks terrible. That's funny. Okay, that's what we'll do. We'll just get ye ol' Obsidian out here. Okay, so Orin interview prep notes. Okay, so something to write down here is what he said was what united us was what is this? Oh, that's the alert box. I don't know how that ended up down there. What I believe he said was what united us was fighting the left.
Things were not completely addressed. There's all, even though Trump took power and unified in a lot of ways, when you come into power, then it's, well, I think obviously, as Joel said, what was holding us together was fighting the left, and as soon as you...
What was holding us together was fighting the left. So I think a good question to ask here might be something like, let's just throw down potential questions on this one. How does this relate to the quote friend enemy distinction and how do you define the friend enemy distinction? So that's a good question to ask. Because on this, what we're trying to figure out, right, what we want to know, that is unreadable for you guys. Can I blow that up? Can I make that bigger? There we go. That's as big as it gets. You guys are going to have to be satisfied with that size. So kind of the thing I want to, something interesting. So when Oren says, like, the thing that was holding us together was fighting the left, and now we have to figure out who's in charge. This is a really interesting point because one of the things Schmidt says that Jones points out is that Schmidt has a negative definition of friend in many instances, which is the having a common enemy. And Jones doesn't particularly Jones doesn't find this to be a satisfactory definition of friend, because enmity is the thing that is substantive in Schmidt's view, and friendship is the thing that is privative. And what that means is that so what that means is, in the Christian worldview, we have a substantive view of the good and a privative view of evil, which means that evil is a privation of the good. So Jones's point is that he thinks that because Schmidt defines enemy and enmity, the evil thing, as substantive, and friendship and friend as a privation of enmity, that the worldview doesn't work. That's his underlying thesis in the decision against Carl Schmitt, which you can read on New Polity's website. It's very good. but that's all. But like also, you know, Jones is also not saying that friends and enemies don't exist. In fact, like the quote from Jones here is really, it's actually very good. After reading Schmidt, the idea that Christian ends can be reached by negotiating for fair outcomes from officially neutral political institutions appears frankly pathetic. Schmidt is a solvent dissolving our lingering liberal childishness. Christians must actually wield the power necessary to win the war, declare men enemies, found institutions, enforce order, and direct citizens towards good ends. Christians must lead. But Carl Schmitt was wrong to locate the essence of the political in the capacity to declare the friend-enemy distinction. Theologically, he argues that something essential to man, his political nature, is contingent upon an effect of his fall, namely enmity. In order to maintain his definition, Schmitt must either deny that politics is natural to man as a part of God's very good creation and hold therefore that it emerges only within the contingent realm of sin, or he must contend that the fall was complete and that our natures are totally depraved, rendering whatever form of politics may have had before sin meaningless to our situation. Either way, for Schmitt, our present-day politics have no meaningful relation to the politics of Eden or the politics of the saints. As Schmitt says, quote, a world in which the possibility of war is utterly eliminated, a completely pacified globe, would be a world without the distinction of friend and enemy, and hence a world without politics. Jones says further down here too, one could argue that even in Eden, the potential enemy is always there, that man is potentially political by nature, even if he, by virtue of living in accord with the will of God in perfect peace, never actualizes his political powers. But this leads to a metaphysically untenable idea that man is created with a power that cannot be perfected except insofar as he sins. So, that is kind of that's a really very small piece of that very long, very, very dense essay that took me 3 or 4 times, no joke, 3 or 4 times reading to understand. And so, I think just, you know, I want to let, you know, if when I speak to Howard, I kind of want to let him talk about what he wanted to talk about. And I did tell him that, like, you'll see as we're watching this tonight, like, he clearly had some specific ideas, and some specific things he wanted to discuss. And I just want to let him talk about those things. But given the chance, I think one of the questions I would have is just what does he mean by friend enemy? And how does that function within a political Eden? Yeah, because I think that's a very important point. That's a very important underlying point. So, here we go.
As you get done, the nature of coalitional politics is the minute you come into power, then you decide what part of
Hi, Crash Gannon. How you doing, buddy? Hey, Alde Gundis. Hey, Gary. I already said hi to Gary. HG Moss, how you doing?
coalition is going to be driving this thing. And I think there's a lot of clashes that were unresolved, even though Trump took power and unified in a lot of ways. You know, foreign policy, a lot of American identity, issues of nationalism. These things were not completely addressed, and so now they have to be worked through in one way or another, and that's what you're seeing play itself out.
Right on. So before we start, we do have a great sponsor. It is Bearskin. You go to bearskintactical.com or
We'll play Tim's
bear.skin/Tim.
ad.
You guys know about the Bearskin hoodie, right? I've worn it on the show quite a bit. It's amazing. It's very comfortable. It's got a lot of pockets. Now's your chance to get one. 60% off. It's great. We're in hoodie season, so it's my favorite season, by the way. You can, for obvious reasons. You can, cold mornings, windy days, surprise snow. You'll want to be wearing one of these things. It is built to last. 340 GSM Bearskin fleece, 10 pockets, rugged, athletic fit. Actually looks good. Plus, if it starts pouring, you can zip on the heavy storm rain jacket, instantly level up to full waterproof protection. You get free U.S. shipping from their U.S. warehouse and gear to last you season after season. So here's what you can do. Text Tim to 36912. Again, that's Tim to 36912. And they'll text you a link so you can lock in your 60% off before the sale disappears. Don't wait till it's over. Grab your Bearskin now while the Black Friday sale is live. You'll also be helping the Fallen Outdoors and Hope for the Warriors Veterans Program. So you're not just buying great gear, you're backing a cause that matters. Grab your Bearskin while the Black Friday deal is live by texting Tim to 36912. Check out Bearskin for sponsoring the show. But let's get back to the debate at hand, the questions. And I want to start with this. One of the breaking points, I suppose, or one of the inflection points is Tucker Carlson. It's not just the interview with Nick Fuentes, but also his appearance at Charlie Kirk's memorial and his general sentiment towards Israel, Zionism, or as some people have outright said, he's anti-Semitic. And we saw text messages from Candace Owens, from Charlie, talking about not wanting to remove Tucker Carlson, though there were donors pressuring him to do so. So it seems like this is the big point. And it seems like the word that pops up every time is Israel. Is this maybe the central focus of what this argument is about, or are there other issues at play?
I want to say no. I think Israel is maybe kind of a symptom of the problem.
My camera froze. Uh-oh. There we go. There we go.
And it can be a huge distraction, and we could sit here for 3 hours kind of going back and forth about Israel because it's such a contentious issue. But I think that the fight is a little more fundamental than that. And Arna, I want you to make sure I'm characterizing it fairly too. But maybe it would help if we kind of, I wrote down a little diatribe here because I wanted to kind of just list all the things that I think we do agree on each other. You seem to agree on like 98% of stuff. What's going on? So I wanted to kind of define that a little bit. Is that fair? Like, can I just kind of like run through some of these things? Okay. And then you just tell me like if I'm off or, if I'm characterizing it well. I think this is where we agree. So in 2006, I was in Fallujah. I was an infantry marine, thinking I was fighting for my country, fighting them over there so we wouldn't have to fight them over here, that whole line, But when I came back, I started school. I went to university. I realized that the real battle to save America, it wasn't overseas, it was here because the most dangerous enemy to our republic was running our universities and institutions. So what we've seen over the last 150 years, leftism has destroyed our culture and our constitution. From FDR's New Deal and his devastating expansion on the bureaucracy, the horror of abortion, LBJ's Great Society, destroyed the black family, permanently dependent underclass. We've watched over a century as our constitution has been eaten away from civil rights law, which led to the permanent enshrining of leftist dogma, from racial quotas and congressional districts to DEI to forcing women to change with men in their locker rooms. We've seen the value of our dollar be destroyed by government spending. We've watched as our own nation became a totalitarian state during COVID, and no one has been held accountable for that. We've seen our government and media lie to us again and again. Mass immigration is destroying our culture. Leftist judges and DAs punish good and reward evil. Young men can't afford to buy homes. Young women are completely fried on SSRI into their cute, empathetic female brains. Americans are not having babies anymore. Muslim immigrants are. We watch as Death to America is chanted from Dearborn. Somali flags are flown in Minneapolis after we fought 2 pointless wars on the false premise that if we fight them over there, we don't have to fight them over here. Young white men were subjected to the most wicked bigotry and racism and discrimination. And all the while, we watched as our quote-unquote dignified conservative class did nothing about it. We heard lofty platitudes, and conservatism conserved very little. We saw our churches. We saw cowardly pastors who were supposed to be speaking truth into the culture and standing against the spirit of the age, instead went along with it. And so here we are, and a ton of people have lost faith in everything. And a ton of people are like, just burn it all down. And I think I would say that we kind of agree with the problem, right? Like, sure, you would be on board with all those. Yeah. And I think that's what, Arn and I are polemicists. We're really good at pointing at something that sucks and saying, hey, look at this really sucks. And that's easy mode. The hard part is like pointing the way out. What do we do now?
Okay. We are gonna keep skipping here.
That I think maybe we can kind of delve into deeper. The first thing, I think the Constitution is still relevant, and I think we can get back to it. And I kind of wrote 3 points that I think maybe we can kind of delve into deeper.
Okay, here we go. So this is where the interview goes fully off the rails. I literally think it goes off the rails at 8:50. I watched it twice. I think it goes off the rails right here. So Joel presents these like 3 points that he wants to discuss, and it just kind of like turns into like Twitter IRL, where they're just like having a debate about if James Lindsay is good or not, which is a lame debate to have, and they all say it, especially Oren and Joel. They're just like, I don't want to talk about this, but Tim just keeps bringing it back to it. So, but Joel's 3 points here are interesting. So let's talk about let's listen to Joel's 3 points.
The first thing, I think the Constitution is still relevant, and I think we can get back to it.
Okay, relevance and being able to get back to it are not 1 point. Those are 2 different things.
2, I believe that your political theory over relies on like the political theory, realpolitik, kind of like a spiritually devoid realism that I think is a little imbalanced. And then 3, I believe that there is a way back. I don't think like the only way out is through. I think that we can.
This is like a
avoid realism. That
I don't even know what this means.
Like,
I don't even know what this means. What does this even mean?
I think the Constitution is still relevant, and I think we can get back to it. 2, I believe that your political theory over relies on like the political theory, realpolitik, kind of like a spiritually devoid realism that I think.
It's over reliant on a spiritually devoid realism. What does that mean? What does Joel mean by that? Let's see if Oren gets to answer this, but let's see if, because I have no recollection of Oren really answering that accusation. Um, but let me write this down. Realpolitik. Spiritually devoid. Really weird. Okay.
Is a little imbalanced. And then 3, I believe that there is a way back. I don't think like the only way out is through. I think that we can claw our way back.
Well, I have a question.
What is okay? What does it mean to like claw our way back? Like, what does that even mean? Like these things just okay.
On your first point, what was it? The Constitution is still relevant? How did you
Yeah. So one thing that is often said by kind of the dissident right or post-liberal crowd is that you hear this quote from John Adams all the time that our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people. It's inadequate for the government of any other. We're no longer a moral and religious people, and so the Constitution is it's inadequate. And there is some truth to that. But I also think that that it's not too late.
When you say the Constitution, do you mean the original intention?
Yeah. I would say
So
that.
blasphemy should be illegal.
Well, blasphemy wasn't outlawed in the original Constitution.
Blasphemy is illegal. At the founding of this country, when the Constitution
was, yeah.
you couldn't blaspheme. You also couldn't swear in public or say obscenities.
Correct.
So Tim's making this point that Oren makes a lot. Yeah, this just turned into a netter debate, and this just turned into a netter debate, and it's lame. It's lame. Leggett is correct. It turned into a very lame, very surface level netter debate, and Leggett, you weren't here. I already told Oren that I wanted to mostly. Let me find this. That I wanted to focus on the things he wanted to talk about that it didn't seem like he got to. He really wanted to talk about like the more metapolitical de Maistre political theory stuff. So that's what we'll be talking about. But given the opportunity, I'd be willing to ask him about Netter. But I really would prefer to just let him lead it and talk about what he wants to talk about, what he feels like he didn't get to say.
Is illegal. At the founding of this country, when the Constitution
was, yeah.
be illegal.
Well, blasphemy wasn't outlawed in the original Constitution.
Blasphemy is illegal. At the founding of this country, when the Constitution
was, yeah.
you couldn't blaspheme.
So Tim is making a point here that I've heard Oren make before. That I think Dave Green made well. I have read books. Look, I've read these 2 books right here. And all of the books on that shelf. And most of the books in that stack that St. Michael is on. The big thick ones at the bottom are reference books. One of them's the Summa and one of them's the Complete Code of Canon Law with commentary. Those are not cover-to-cover reads. Nobody tell Christian Wagner I said that the Summa is not a cover-to-cover read. I'm not smart enough for that, okay? What back there have I read all the way through? Brave New World. 4,000 Weeks. The Space Trilogy. That's 3 books. It's in 1 volume. But it's 3 books. That's 3 books. Alice in Wonderland. Dude, my camera froze again. I gotta stop bumping the, uh-oh. I bumped the desk. Uh-oh. Oh, no. That's bad. Oh, we have a problem. Oh no. Yo, hello. I know you guys can hear me still. That's why I'm trying to keep talking, but I'm like, um, my camera, it's. You should just restart it. I bumped a wire. I bumped the desk, and I had a. Oh crap! I had a power strip like a power strip, like a surge protector command strip to the bottom of my desk, um, where I plugged everything in for cable management, and it's fallen down. There it is. Okay, we got it. We got it. We got it back. We got it back. It's not the internet. My internet is crazy fast. Um, I think my internet speed would probably blow your mind. Hold on. Yeah, I got 720 right now in my house. Yeah, I'm getting 700 down. Um, my up right now is sitting around 40 to 50. Yeah. Yeah. So, Satan doesn't like good news. Yeah, it's the devil is yeah, it does make sense that my like setup that has worked for years, literally for years, I've had the exact same setup with the power strip, like, and it's not like I haven't bumped my desk before. It does make sense that like on the day I'm prepping for the best thing that's happened to me in my career since starting my career, getting my job with Matt, like that it just like gives up for no reason whatsoever. Anyway, um I totally forget what we were talking about. All right, let's just click this. Let's just push play and back up a little.
Well, blasphemy it wasn't outlawed in the original Constitution.
Blasphemy is illegal. At the founding of this.
Oh, we were talking about books I've read. Hold on. Uh, the Father Brown stories, which is in this copy that you bought me, Legate. Take that. So, I hope he's still here. Let's see. Patrick Buchanan, Death of the West, Canticle for Leibowitz, Dune, Mother Angelica's biography, Ship of Fools by Tucker Carlson. The other books on that shelf that I haven't read, the big yellow ones, are a really cool antique set of original Kodak photography guides. Those are super sick, very difficult to find. Technics and Civilization. I've read like 3/4 of that. I'm still getting through it. We're getting there. It's hard. It gets hard. It's hard. I've got the Collected Poems of Donald Trump, which is a funny book. It's funny to own. It's just a collection of Trump tweets. It's very funny. Oh, Hillbilly Elegy. I don't know if I said that or not, but I've read Hillbilly Elegy. That's on the shelf back there. The Divine Comedy. I think I've read Inferno. I don't remember if I've read the other ones. So, yeah. I've read books. I have read books. You dude buy me that book. Look, you can see it right there. It's under the green one. The green one is The Princess Bride. I've read that. I've read The Princess Bride. What do you want me to do? I'm not dumb. I just don't know how to write. All right? Those are different things. I'm not dumb. I'm just illiterate. A scholar, lol. Yeah, I'm not stupid. I just don't know how to write. So I'm kind of the opposite of a scholar. I don't know what you would categorize that as, but that is my situation. My phone is buzzing off the hook. Gotta turn this off. Yeah. Those are a good selection of books. Well, this is my like small. These are all the ones I just have in here for mostly aesthetic purposes, or like because they're good to have around for streaming. My actual like collection slash, I guess you'd call it like my library, is in my living room. So write in point form, lol, like the rest of us. So here's the thing. Legate has informed me that I should learn how to write, and I am not good at it. I'm so bad at it that in my day job, I have to have my captions and stuff grammar checked for videos. And I texted the nice lady who does the grammar checking, my immediate supervisor, and told her that the like punctuation changes she's making and stuff, like I do not understand them to the level that when I'm doing it, I do wonder if I speak English. Like that's how bad it is. I don't understand grammar at all. I don't get it. I don't understand why. I don't even understand why it matters, to be honest. Like, to be completely honest with you, I don't understand why grammar matters, because if you understand what I'm saying well enough to correct me and make it, right, it seems to me that if the purpose of the writing is to communicate an idea, that if you understand what I'm saying and the idea well enough to change it, right, then I did it right, and you're just being dumb and like, it didn't have the little period with a tail, didn't have a comma. Like, I don't understand the point of that. I don't understand the point of commas, okay? That's what this rant is about. This rant is about commas being gay, okay? Commas are fake. And the pantsuit ladies in elementary school made them up so that sensitive white boys like me, sensitive young white men like me, will be sad and feel stupid. And we're not stupid. I'm smart. I'm probably smarter than all of my elementary school teachers, and I still don't know how to use a comma. So what now? Okay? That's what I'm saying, okay? That's my point. And I'm sticking to it. And Legate can make fun of me in the chat and complain all he wants, but I'm correct about this. You're going to give me a swirly for this? Bitch, come and try it. You know where I live. Roll up. I'm right about this. If I communicate an idea so good, you know how to be like, actually, then I communicated the idea, and that's what matters. And you're being a pedantic asshole for correcting me. I think that about all of grammar. I don't mean that I had a specific you. I just mean all of grammar. Your rant would end up with like 10 commas in text form. Who gives a shit? All right? I don't care. Commas are fake and gay. They are made up by Big Ed, big education, to make sensitive young white men who are very smart feel stupid. And full stops? Those are called periods. Wait, time out. Do British people call a period a full stop? No, we got to take a time. We're taking a timeout. Timeout. I need HG Moss right now to tell me if British people call periods full stops. You do? Bro, that's all right. What are you doing? What are we doing? As a native English speaker, I only saw the importance of grammar when I started learning other languages. Knowing the rules of English helped a lot. Knowing the rules of languages like Latin. I know the rules. I know what a verb, an object, indirect object, noun, adjective, adverb. All right? I know what those are. I don't know how to use punctuation. I don't know when a sentence ends, and I don't know how to use punctuation. I don't know when I'm supposed to use a compound sentence. You know what? Another thing that pisses me off about grammar, why can't I put and at the beginning of a sentence? I feel like everybody who tells me I can't put and at the beginning of a sentence, what if the sentence is and from the last sentence? And I'm going to put it there. I'm going to put and at the beginning of a sentence. And you can't do anything about it. And Legate Agrestes knows where I live. And Legate Agrestes, I'm going to burn your grammar book. I'm going to put and at the beginning of every sentence I want. I don't get it. I don't see why I can't do it. I feel like everybody who's telling me I can't is being retarded. I don't know what you want me to do about this. I'm going to mail you a grammar book. I'm going to burn it. I'm going to burn it and stream me burning the grammar textbook. That's what's going to happen. I just can't get over the fact that British people call a period full stop. Oi, you need to put a full stop at the end of your sentence there. Full stop is 2 words. How can that be a good noun? It's so dumb. What are we doing? What are we doing? All right, we should actually do interview prep. I'm just riling up my mod because it's funny this way. Like if you're gonna try to swirly me or shove me in a locker, bring some bring your blicky because I'm gonna have mine on me. Full stop is a carryover from Morse code. Modernists. It's not about the syllables. It's 2 words. Full stop is 2 words. It's not about the syllables. It's 2 words. Syllables are also fake, okay? I could do a rant. You want me to do? I'll make it up right now. If you need me to, I'll make up a rant right now about why syllables are fake. What the heck is a swirly? Don't worry about it, okay? Dueling saber too? You bring your saber and I will have my weapon of choice and we'll see who wins. Watch Indiana Jones, okay? What do you got? What? I sit in the big red chair, okay? I'm sitting in the big red chair and I'm going to talk about why commas are gay. All right. Should probably get back to doing actual substantive things, but now I'm going to need water, so I'm going to get water. Yo, fuck water. Fuck water. All right. Pint of twisted tea or Coors Light. The mountain is blue. What are we going with? What do we think? What do we think? What do we think? Huh? What do we think? That chair is small. The chair is humongous. I'm a spelling anarchist. I stick to the dictionary. I don't know if that's an interesting. Okay. So funny, Coors. All right, here we go. Hey, boys. Here's to the death of grammar. Long live run-on sentences. And make all commas burn in hell. Oh, phenomenal. Mix them together. Aren't you supposed to be like the stream mom that stops me from doing these things? Go get Brienne. I'm uncomfortable. Tell Brienne I need her because Haley is because you're telling me to mix Coors and Twisted Tea. Unironically, the toast that me and my friends used to do in college was Hail to Christ the King, who gives us brethren and strong drink. We used to know it in Latin. I don't know it in Latin anymore. My dog is rolling around on his back. All right, let's watch this.
Of this country when the Constitution,
was, yeah.
you couldn't blaspheme. You also couldn't swear in public or say obscenities.
Correct.
And the interpretation, the important thing to understand about the Constitution is that we interpret it wholly differently from how it was interpreted by the founders. In that it only applies to federal law. Meaning, if you live in Virginia and Virginia said guns are banned, then guns were banned. But the federal government couldn't ban states from allowing people or couldn't ban ownership of guns.
Yeah, I don't. This is. I just want to skip this. This isn't really interesting. The 14th Amendment made it so that the Constitution applied to the states. It didn't used to apply to the states. Now it applies to the states. But Brienne would tell you to Zin too. Where is my Zin? Hold up. Zin. With Trump on it after he got shot and my name on the back. Someone called me Catholic Tim Pool. I'm sorry. You look nothing like him and don't really behave anything like him. All right.
So when we look at the Constitution right now and people say it should apply, they're talking about a dramatically different interpretation.
Right. Yes. And, yeah. Go ahead.
When you say the Constitution is still relevant, the question is which one, right? Because as Tim has pointed out, after the incorporation doctrine, we radically changed our understanding of what the Constitution meant. Of course, another radical change comes. I mean, we don't number our republics, but we have changed the fundamental meaning of the Constitution many times over. When we got rid of the Articles of Confederation, we were one country. When we instituted the Constitution, we were a new one.
Okay. Oren is
When we
doing a
instituted the
little
14th Amendment.
sneaky here, and it's genius, and I love it. He is sneaking in Iron Polygon into this debate, which is a great essay that you should all read. But we will be covering I'm just gonna read you the part that he is talking about. I'm just gonna read it to you real quick, okay? Bum, bum, bum. Okay, here we go. By my count, Anglophone North America is on its fifth legal regime. The First Republic was the constitutional regime, which illegally abolished the British colonial governments. The Second Republic was the constitutional regime, which illegally abolished the Articles of Confederation. The Third Republic was the Unionist regime, which illegally abolished the principle of federalism. The Fourth Republic is the New Deal regime, which illegally abolished the principle of limited government. So we're on our fifth, right? Because the first one is the British. Of course, all these coups are confirmed by the principle of adverse possession, otherwise we would find ourselves looking for the rightful heirs of Metacom or Edward the Confessor or whoever. Nor is there any automatic reason to treat any of these 5 regimes as better or worse than the others. If, like me, you're tired of the Fourth Republic and would like to see it abolished, and we all know about it, all we know about its successor is that it will be the Fifth Republic, it has no need to resemble the third or the second or the first. Okay. So, we change our republics. We change what makes us, we change our governmental system, but we don't call ourselves anything different. And that sounds kind of like, it might sound a little weird, but the point, and this is from Yarvin, in Unqualified Reservations. The point Moldbug is making is that neither did the Romans. The Byzantines still call themselves Romans. They didn't call themselves Eastern Roman. They didn't call themselves like Byzantines. They were the Roman Empire, right? Constantine was the Roman emperor. Yeah. So there you go. Like, why are we the every time we change, you can go through that. Orrin himself has, on this hypothesis, proposed that we're in the Fifth Republic, which actually happens after the New Deal, which is the civil rights regime. He thinks that the civil rights regime is different enough from the Fourth Republic, from the New Deal regime, that it warrants being a new thing. I've done a lot of thought. I've written, actually. I think I've written on this. Let me look at something. I might have written on this in a while ago. I might have written on this a while back. Is it not opening? Hello? Oh no. Hold on. Shoot. That's bad. Oh, here we go. All right, here we go. Never mind. I found it. I thought I lost it. I might have written on this. Let me check my other Obsidian Vault. I have written on this. Look at me. I did write on this. This is interesting. This is pretty good. Wow, this is actually really good. Okay. Can I show you this? Did you use periods? Dude, that's so funny. All right, let's look at this. There's not a lot of commas in here. So this is, for you guys to get the, also, funnily enough, for anybody looking for the lore on Legate and I's fighting over, Legate and I fighting over grammar, that kind of originates with me sending Legate this document that I'm about to show you, and him being like, what, how can you not, like, you're really bad at this. How are you this bad at writing? So I'll show it to you. Okay. Oh, this is uploaded to ShareNote. Okay, I can put this in the chat so you guys can actually follow along if you want, but you can also follow along on screen. But here you go. Here's the link to this. Okay. So this comes from my. I was having some thoughts on basically the idea that certain racial slurs are more offensive to our society. Obsidian user detected, buddy. You got no idea. You want to see something? Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I use Obsidian. I got a lot of it. Yeah. This is also a lot of stuff in here is hidden. There's a ton of stuff in here that's just hidden. Um, like pints used to be in here and was just hidden. So all of the pints notes are in here. This is not all of them, but like triple or quadruple these spots. Yeah. So anyway, and so that's a common, like, that's a blasphemy law, right? And you get canceled by the media if you say certain words, um, which is something interesting because actually this is an idea that I first heard Oren say, which was that we don't have a state-run media. We have Josiah writes like Latin circa 5 AD. I kind of do, actually. We don't have media. We don't have a state-run media. We have a media-run state. Um, so, um, and so the idea here I had was that slurs against protected groups are blasphemies against divine equity, which is the deity of the chosen religion of the civil rights regime. And so I actually think that the underlying conflict between the Joel Berrys and the Orrin McIntyres, yes, push like on the stream. I think that the underlying conflict between the Joel Berrys and the Orrin McIntyres, right, between this new right wing of the party, the new right wing of MAGA, and the more, right liberal wing of MAGA, I think it's actually over what the right liberals see as mass apostasy against the state religion and the religion of our society, which tends to be a worship of the divine equity. Yarvin argues in Iron Polygon the U.S. is on its fifth republic, each abolishing the last. Judges are burning their credibility and standing on the accelerator, speeding headlong toward a collision with the executive. The judicial branch largely created the Fifth Republic through its ruling and is now burning its credibility and daring another branch, the executive, to take its power from it. Simultaneously, we are also witnessing a mass apostasy from the quote-unquote religion of the Fifth Republic. These two parallel but separate shifts in momentum do not bode well for the long-term survival of the Fifth Republic. I predict that historians will look back at 2024 as the beginning of the Sixth Republic. So obviously I'm actually one ahead of Yarvin because this was an initial thoughts portion of this. I thought I had it mixed up, but Yarvin proposes we're on the fourth, and on our fifth total legal regime. We're in the Fourth Republic, fifth total legal regime. And Orrin McIntyre says we're on the Fifth Republic and the sixth total legal regime. And I'm saying that either way, I think we're on the cusp of another one because we're witnessing mass apostasy at the same time as the underlying power structures of the Republic is accelerating headlong towards a collision. So, when religion and politics travel in the same cart, the writers believe nothing can stand in their way. Their movements become headlong, faster and faster, until they plunge over the cliff together. Frank Herbert, Dune Messiah. That's Paul Atreides in like the first or second chapter. To understand fully why right liberal commentators and political celebrities agreeing with the left and freaking out about Shiloh Hendricks fundraiser, you first have to understand this fact. They're not primarily offended by the use of a word. Their paradigm, conscious or subconscious, is that this is akin to mass public apostasy. What I'm saying is that cancel culture I'm not familiar with the fourth turning hypothesis, so you'll have to explain that to me. If you don't want to type it into YouTube chat, you can DM it to me on Discord. Um, what I'm saying is that cancel culture is the equivalent mechanism to excommunication in Christendom. Excommunication is a mercy. It's a statement by the church that an individual is in danger of losing their eternal salvation and needs to reconcile with the church. A canceled person is rarely, if ever, offered the same chance at reconciliation that excommunication persons are offered. In fact, I wish the episcopacy used excommunication more for this reason. Shiloh Hendricks not only being canceled but raising over $600,000 shows that the power of the secular religion, which enforces these excommunications, is diminishing. Meanwhile, in government, the judiciary is now on a collision course with the executive as they attempt to claim unprecedented levels of power. Judge Mary S. McElroy ruled that the Trump administration freezing the disbursement funds for climate infrastructure grants, finding that the pause in dispersing funds was illegal, stating that, quote, agencies of the executive branch do not have unlimited authority to further a president's agenda, which is false. Like, that's just, no, they do. That is literally the whole point. The Constitution says that the executive is in complete control, so that's just wrong. Judge Beryl A. Howell ruled that it was unconstitutional for President Trump to revoke the security clearances of the law firm Perkins Coie. If you don't know who Perkins Coie is, it was the law firm hired Fusion GPS to produce the Steele dossier on behalf of the Clinton campaign and DNC, and the DNC, they still, I never looked into an update on this case, but they still had security clearances in like early this year, and Trump tried to revoke their security clearances, and a judge ruled that was unconstitutional, despite the fact that we now know for a fact that they were using those security clearances and abusing them. Colleen Kolar-Kotoli ruled that President Trump can't require proof of citizenship to vote. The Supreme Court just today ruled 7-2 that Trump cannot deport Trinidad gang members with the Alien Enemies Act. I think that has since kind of... I don't know what the update on that is, but the points, you get the point. And of course, I wrote this in, a long time ago, like a very long time ago. And of course, the Trump administration has recently correctly arrested 2 judges for aiding illegals. The judiciary, instead of easing up on this course, is standing on the accelerator. As Yarvin has written and Orrin McIntyre has expanded on, America is now in its 5th legal regime. In the Iron Polygon, he says, by my count, we just read that. The power base of the Fifth Republic is the judiciary, which is, as I have laid out, currently burning itself to the ground, and the regime religion is the cult of divine equity, which is currently experiencing a mass apostasy. Trump could burn the Fifth Republic down right now if he ignores this Supreme Court decision, which is fundamentally about the equity of illegals in our system. The mass transition of power from the judiciary to the executive branch, happening in parallel with mass apostasy from the regime religion, has only 2 possible outcomes. It is clear that the judiciary in this cart does believe that nothing can stand in its way, but at this moment, Trump not only can stand in their way, but can block all other paths. They're going much too fast to stop and will go over the edge. That is my position on that's the total tangent. So what Orrin's talking about in this moment, in this debate, is he's talking about he's just talking about this theory. I think that we're at the end of the current one, or possibly at the end of the current one, like Trump could end it if he wanted to. So anyway, back to the interview.
Amendment after the Civil War. That radically changed the way that federalism works. We basically destroyed the 10th Amendment right then and there. Incorporation doctrine changes it again. Civil rights regime more or less rewrites the entire Constitution and our understanding of it. So the question is, I have for most people who want to return to the Constitution is which one? Because what I find is most conservatives say, oh, I want to go back to the founding. No, you don't. You don't want to go back to what the founders actually believed. You don't want to go, and that's okay. But let's be honest about what we're talking about. What we believe now, what conservatives in the 1990s believed, what they believe now is radically different from what the founders believed. And if we went back to what the founders believed, most people saying, I want to return to the Constitution would be up in arms and they'd call it some kind of religious Christian nationalist fascism. Like they would. They absolutely would. They wouldn't let the Immigration Act of 1790, like they would not support a return to those things. So that's critical when we say we can go back. It's going back to what? When?
I agree. And I think that those are all conversations that need to be had, but they need to be had in the context of we're trying to restore something that's been broken, that's been eroded. Not, and this, what I feel like I see from you and a lot of your approach online and with a lot of the kind of the political philosophers that you talk to, and again, correct me if I'm seeing you wrong, but I almost, when you're a huge promoter of people like Curtis Yarvin, Nick Land, almost this kind of accelerationist idea that, and Charles Haywood's another, I think, good example of this. He wrote the Foundationalist Manifesto. You've had him on your show as well, and he famously in his manifesto says that like there's no way back. Like he says the way is shut. The only way to fix this is to accelerate its demise, destroy it, burn it down through civil war, bloodshed, whatever it takes, and then build something new from the ashes. And that's kind of where I draw the line. Is I think that we can have these conversations in the context of like, okay, I want to be a radical restorationist. Let's talk about how far back we need to go. Maybe we don't want to go all the way back to the founding. Maybe there's a middle ground there, but it should be in the context of going back to the original intent of the American Republic, not this accelerationist. It's too late. We're all black-pilled. Let's just burn it all down. And that seems to be the attitude I think of a lot, especially the young right. They're in such despair and they're so hopeless that they don't see a way back. And I think it's important for conservatives, especially Christian conservatives, who we believe in God, we believe in miracles, we believe that anything is possible, to show that it is possible. If people stand up for what's right, if we have courage, if we clearly articulate our beliefs, we can. We may not. Nothing's guaranteed. We may lose the battle, but we got to fight the battle.
What year do you think America is what it was supposed to be, or like what are we?
I don't know.
This is a really good question, actually, from Tim. But I want to pause there because I think the main problem I see with this argument that Joel's making that like, oh, we should be radical restorationists, is that I don't hear him having really actually grappled with the John Adams quote, right? Like, we want to be radical restorationists. Well, what you actually want then is radical evangelism. Okay. You either have to convert everyone or you have to kick people out you either have to convert everyone or you have to disenfranchise either physically or legally people who would have a say in this, who are not Christian and moral and religious, right? Like that's the John Adams quote, right? That they were talking about at the beginning of the interview. So you either have to disenfranchise them one way or the other, or you have to disenfranchise them, you have to convert them all. So those are your choices, right? And I'm not sure that we can convert them all quick enough to save the country. I mean, through God, all things are possible, but also at a certain level, you have to act with prudential judgment. And you can't undertake plans which you think are more likely than not to fail. We see this in just war doctrine, right? You're not allowed to fight a war if there's not a chance of winning, even if the other two conditions for just war are met. Even if the other two conditions for just war are met, the other condition of just war, right? Even if it's a grave evil and it needs to be stopped and you have to, and it's like you're being harmed or there's an immediate harm. If you don't have a chance of winning, you can't do it. You have to have a chance to win. And if we have a chance to win, well, how do we have a chance to win? We have a chance to win through disenfranchisement. We have a chance to win through evangelization, and we should do that, but we should probably do it simultaneous with disenfranchisement.
I think a good thesis statement or a mission statement for the country comes from the Declaration of Independence. Chesterton, famously said that America is the only country that was founded on a creed. That the Declaration is not just a document of it's not just a legal document; it's a document of philosophy and theology and literature, and it's kind of articulating what we're striving for.
Should blasphemy be illegal?
I don't think so. Well, it depends. What do you mean by blasphemy? How local, illegal at what level? The federal level?
Well, so I pulled up the story. One of the most famous cases.
Well, those are two different questions, right? Should blasphemy be illegal? And at what level are two different objections to it?
Last time someone was actually criminally prosecuted, it's Commonwealth of Massachusetts v. Abner Nealon, 1838, and he was convicted for blasphemy and sentenced to 60 days, and the Supreme Court refused to take his case. blasphemy was illegal for a long time. But this was the last bit. 1789, when free speech was enshrined, the interesting thing is that there actually was not free speech. And there's an interesting understanding of, if we look at the original articles, what the intention was of the First Amendment. It was that the founding fathers, for a period of decades, were trying to meet at bars or churches and have conversations about how governance should be held in the colonies. Yeah. And the Crown disrupted these, shut them down, and charged people for having these conversations. Right. The principal element of the First Amendment, the right to peaceably assemble, meant literally, if me and my boys are at church and we want to have a conversation about, well, they have a First Amendment right to do it. Or more importantly, interesting, in that the Second Amendment was up into the 80s, or you go to 1790 or even 1800. So the question then becomes, if we're trying to maintain a constitution, a government, I think already makes a good point of when, which one, what is the actual argument for what the country was and why we support it. And this is, it's frustrating to me because I hear this a lot from moderate or mainstream conservatives, arguments about defending the Constitution. Well, the left says quite literally the exact same thing, but they view it very differently. So what I think we're seeing is...
What do you mean by, like, give me an example?
The leftists argue that we have free speech, but free speech never included hate speech. Hate speech, of course, is speech meant to question, but certainly can't lock yourself in, say, obscenities, or maybe amendment now, where they know what we're trying to make this country decided.
Establishment conservatives to understand. Look, I grew
that way, so the Constitution really is largely a symbol.
So this is really critical, and this is what I want establishment conservatives to understand. Look, I grew up on talk radio conservatism. I totally understand these pitches. I believe all these pitches. I'm familiar with what they're saying. But when you turn the Constitution into a deity, when you deify the Constitution, and you make it the central identity, you create a scenario where people are just fighting over the meaning of the words so they can control the definition. Mm-hmm. A Constitution is not some contract that's written up that then defines the country. A constitution is a reflection of the way that the people are constituted. It is the way that they live their lives, their traditions, their beliefs, their values, their heritage, their language, their understanding. The Constitution doesn't make the people. The people make the Constitution. So the Constitution only works when the people are already living in the way that the Constitution lays out for them. That's what makes a republic, because they are people who are self-governing. They are living in the way of tradition, and no one needs to come in and tell them how to live their lives and dictate to them each move, because they already have such a tightly woven cultural identity that everything is second nature. They govern themselves, which is to say the community governs. It is tied to those traditions and those beliefs. The Constitution has never and will never compel people to live in a particular way. And when you turn the Constitution into this, the thing that defines you as a people, then it's just about arguing over what that document means. And that's why we so radically changed what the country is, because we abstracted ourselves into this legal definition that can be manipulated by people making arguments rather than tying it to actual beliefs, actual religion, actual tradition.
Well, okay, so you're partially right there in the sense that the Constitution and our laws are a reflection of the people, but you're kind of...
Okay, I think that's Demestra. Hopefully Legate's still here and he can confirm or correct me. But I believe that is Demestra on, you only have to write things down when you're losing it, and that the Constitution is just a written mirror of the people, basically, is a good way to think about it, of the Constitution, how the people are constituted. But I think the next thing Joel's going to say here is actually, one of the reasons I have the books is because the next thing Joel's going to say, I think is kind of correct, but I think he's incorrect about his conclusion in some ways.
Doing this postmodern thing where, at some point, what do words mean? People define them differently. It's whoever's in power is the one who makes the decision. I'm a moral realist. I believe that words actually do mean something. You can determine what words mean based off of the intent of the person who wrote them to the best of your ability. While yes, the people create the Constitution, I also think that the Constitution and laws shape the people. And I'll give you an illustration of this. So, if the Constitution is just a snapshot of the people, why do we have to write it down? Why do you think we had to write it down?
Well, the argument, again, for many is that you don't, right? But this is Joseph Demestre goes into quite a bit of detail in the gender nature of political constitutions.
I was right. It is Demestre.
Of writing things down. And this is something, by the way...
but why do you need the government to enforce it? If it's all coming from the people, why do you even need a government to enforce the law? I mean, if it's springing from the people and the people are going to do what they're going to do, I think they're constituted correctly.
I think your question actually goes to Arn's point as to why you need it written down, is because the Anti-Federalists and the Federalists were debating.
I was just getting to that,
yeah. Because not everyone was on board, right?
Well, more importantly,
well, okay, here's the thing. Why do you need to write it down? You only need to write it down when it's needs to be... Right? This is Demestre. You only have to write it down when people are disagreeing. That's the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists disagreeing. But here's the other thing. And Jones talks about this, that laws should derive from custom. And Louis the Ninth, St. Louis the Ninth, ruled in this way, right? He would go into a place and they didn't have like legal, like the law wasn't all written down, right? There wasn't law about, and I think I've said this on the show before, so forgive me, but like there was a case that Jones quotes, or that Jones talks about, where like the peasants were saying, hey, we've always been allowed to take this many carts of wood from the forest. And it was, I think they were like, we can take 2 carts of wood from the forest. And the Lord was saying, no, they can only take 1 cart of wood from the forest. And he was punishing them for it. And it got, they were arguing about it. It got bad. So Louis has to come in. He has to make a ruling because the king is the chief judge, right? He's the head of the judiciary in the way we would think about it. But this is before there would have been a state as we think about it. So anyway, the king comes in and he makes a ruling. What does Louis do? He's not looking at like, do you have it written down somewhere? Because they didn't have it written down. What did he do? He looked at the custom. And the custom he was looking at was, okay, what is the custom of this place, right? How many carts of wood have you gotten in the past? And he looks back at it and he sees, well, sometimes they take 1 and sometimes they take 2. And if it's going to be particularly cold or particularly wet, they take 2, And so he says, well, they can take two. But it's never written down, right? It's an enforcement of the custom. So ideally, law would be enforcement of custom. And so you only need to write down when you're losing it. That's one thing. Now, the second thing, I think, let's go back.
Like, I mean, why do you think we had to write it down?
Well, the argument again,
I also think that the Constitution and laws shape the people. And
The Constitution and the laws shape the people, which is true. However, I don't think that our Constitution and our laws shape the people in a good way because they're liberal, right? And neither did Pius XI. When he wrote Quadragesimo, he said, the concentration of power and might, the characteristic mark, as it were, of contemporary economic life, the fruit that the unlimited freedom of struggle among competitors has its own nature produced, and which lets only the strongest survive. And this is very often the same saying, those who fight the most violently, those who give the least heed to their conscience. Wow, I messed that sentence up. This is often the same as saying, only the strongest survive. And this is often the same as saying, those who fight the most violently, those who give the least heed to their conscience. This accumulation of might and power... Oh, wait, this is the wrong quote, I think. Ha ha. Is this the wrong quote? I think this was the wrong quote. Bum, bum, bum. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, hold on. I know how to do this. I know how to do it. I'll look it up. It is power is... Sorry, it's Jones breaking this down. Because power is real and efficacious, the abandonment of the Christian conception of just power led to the construction of a society not of freedom but of slavery. It is important to grasp this. When powerful people use their power for self-interest as a master over slaves, this has the social consequence of transforming the people over time into people who are servile. This is because power has real and unavoidable consequences. Think of a father with his son. It doesn't matter if the father denies the existence of his power. That doesn't make it go away. Even if he denies it, a father's behavior forms his sons into a certain type of person, regardless of how quote-unquote equal to his son he pretends to be. The selfish and abusive father cannot avoid the consequences of reality of social power, and so his son will always bear the scars of his abuse. Most tragically, but all too often, by becoming abusive himself. Power, whether just or unjust, tends to replicate itself in those subject to it. Liberalism has created a society that masked real power with a formally equal competition for maximum satisfaction of self-interest. This began at the top with the wealthy structuring themselves as competing powers, but because power is real and efficacious, this structure was reproduced over time down and through the social order. There you go. That's the big, right? That's what Joel's saying. But the problem is that our Constitution, because it is based on freedom and based on helping oneself, because it's based on competition, self-interest, and caring only for oneself primarily, that shapes our people, right? And that's what the Constitution is based on. That's the Catholic objection to liberalism, and that's the Catholic post-liberal objection to the current constitutional order, because it forms the people in a way which we would not like the people to be formed in. Now, you can object to that, but I think that they're both right here, and I really don't think that, given the chance to answer, that Oren would disagree. Um, the problem is that when maximum self-interest is the doctrine, and liberalism is the doctrine, you are inevitably going to end up at things like the state kidnapping your kids and giving them sex changes, because the children are seen as individuals, not as members of a unit, which is a family. Moving right along.
And I'll give you an illustration of this. So, if the Constitution is just a snapshot of the people, why do we have to write it down? Like, I mean, why
Political constitutions as to the advantages and disadvantages of writing things down. And this is something, by the way,
but why do you need to
go quite a bit of detail in the gender nature of political constitutions as to the advantages and disadvantages of writing things down. And this is something, by the way,
but why do you need the government to enforce it? If it's all coming from the people, why do we even need a government to enforce the law? I mean, if it's springing from the people and the people are going to do what they're going to do, I think they're constituted correctly.
I think your question actually goes to Aaron's point as to why you need it written down, is because the Anti-Federalists and the Federalists were debating.
I was just getting to that.
Yeah, not everyone was on board, right?
Well, no, more importantly, the Federalists did not want a Bill of Rights because they were worried that enumerating the rights would make people believe that those were the only rights available to them.
Right.
So they actually thought that writing it down, capturing those rights, guaranteeing those rights was a downside for the Constitution because it would be limiting. And so this is one of the things, if people have rights, you don't have to tell them. You don't have to enumerate them. That was the understanding of the Federalists, which is why they push back against this. And so you end up in the scenario where, look, you understand, having been to the Middle East, right? Like that actually, the idea that everyone has a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness or property is not actually self-evident to a lot of cultures, a lot of peoples, right?
Correct.
And so actually,
any non-Christian culture.
correct, right? And so when we say self-evident, we meant self-evident to a specific people. So it's not that I don't believe words don't have meaning.
Well, the original draft of the Constitution didn't say self-evident. It said like something like divine and inspired. It was more religious in nature. And because the Declaration was a statement of theology. It was a Christian statement. It wasn't enlightenment. The other thing too, I think one of the big debates, there's kind of this new populism on the right. It's more, I don't even know how to describe it. It's more focused on people. It's a little more animal, a little more real. Whereas you kind of have the pie in the sky conservatives that are all like law and these abstract principles, right? And so I think there's a middle ground there where both of these meet. For example, we know that we were constituted. Our stock, the founding stock of America, was the same as the stock in Europe at the time. But we still had to separate from Europe, and we did it with a document. We were the same people genetically, but we still had to separate them from them. Because we had Christian Europeans under a Christian tyrant living under tyranny and despotism in Great Britain. And so it was that document that created that separation.
But it did
one people from another.
There's one other point on the Federalist versus Anti-Federalist.
Oh gosh, but see, this is one of the okay. Hold on.
In Great Britain, and so it was that document that created that separation.
But it did
one people from another.
There's one other point
under tyranny. We were the same people genetically.
But it didn't.
But we still had to separate them from them.
Really important
because we had Christian Europeans under a Christian tyrant living under tyranny and despotism in Great Britain. And so it was that document that created that separation.
But it did
one people from another.
That document that created separation of one people from another. That's super important. I really want to ask him about that. What is he saying there that got missed, but it didn't?
There's one other point on the Federalists versus Anti-Federalists, and it's the Anti-Federalist side, that if these rights are not written down, they will change and we will lose them. And so, considering they were different states, and the views were all slightly different, they said, these have to be guaranteed, otherwise 20 years from now, the federal government can say, no, you actually can't do that.
Yes.
And so, they wanted it written down.
Right.
However,
if we hadn't had those written down, they would have dissolved very quickly.
I disagree.
Because people have been, those rights have been under attack since the founding. I mean, for 250 years.
The main issue here is, one, to the offense of anybody who's not Christian, or I suppose that's not necessarily true, but this is a Christian nation, was founded as such. And the issue is that the federal constitution did not proclaim this because each state had their own rules as to, their own laws as to Christianity. Most notably with Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and New England in God. I believe Maryland was the only one. Well, I think Virginia was because Thomas Jefferson. You just had to believe in God. I believe it was a Christian God of some sort. But Maryland, because they were largely Catholic, allowed you to just say, if it's a Christian God, you're good. But the states all basically said, if you don't believe in Christ, you cannot hold office.
Yep.
And that is a Christian nation. The federal constitution avoided asserting a specific religion because then you get the Catholics in Maryland upset with the Protestants of Virginia. And now, today, liberals argue the federal constitution never says God, never says Christianity, and we have drifted from those moral traditions largely more and more over time. So again, I appreciate the federal constitution. I think it's great, but I also think there's an issue with abandoning state constitutions and acting like they don't exist.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, federalism took a terrible blow.
Yeah,
in the Civil
so
War.
this is just the debate being had here is if the writing of it down split us, right? That's what I think Oren wants to debate that point, but we're just kind of accepting it and moving on, which is, it's frustrating, but okay.
And it's hard to argue for federalism from that standpoint now, because then people say you're arguing for slavery and all this stuff, and that puts you in a bind. But we do need kind of a reassertion of federalism. I think we do need a reassertion of, and this is kind of what can be fun about this discussion. We have 250 years of history that we can look back on, where we can say, like, there's precedent for this. Like, this isn't an un-American thing that we're proposing. And we can propose it from that standpoint, that we're not coming in as like Christian nationalists from the outside here to subvert America and subvert the Constitution and turn America into our own thing. We're talking about going back to what we were for the first 80 years of our existence. And so
yeah, this is actually my problem with the term Christian nationalism. I don't like it because I think it makes something novel out of what is just being an American.
Yes.
We were already a Christian nation. There's no need for a new term for it. It's not new. It's not novel. We didn't, Stephen Wolfe didn't cook it up somewhere.
Right.
It's just the way that the United States has functioned. But the problem, and this is a core issue, Joel, you have to address, right? Republics are a very specific form of government. It's not
This is so good. Here we go.
just people vote. That's not what a republic is. A republic is a gathering of self-governing people who live in a specific way and have enough virtue that they do not require a centralizing force to smooth over their differences, because they don't have the level of discipline or cultural homogeneity to solve these problems. Republics are regularly cited from everyone from Aristotle to Machiavelli as a place where the citizens specifically fight in the military. That you can't have a standing army and have a republic. And you know who said that? The guys writing the Federalist Papers, who said very specifically the reason that you're keeping the Second Amendment and the reason that you need to turn your militias over to the federal government is so that we don't have standing armies, because if we do, that's a danger to the sovereignty of the people and will eventually corrode the republic. Republics can't span continents. They can't be empires. They can't scale to the way we've had, and that's why it's so difficult to discuss the United States as a republic.
This is another point that Andrew makes too. Andrew talks about this kind of extensively, is the problem with standing armies in any type of government system, because the priority should be peace, and if you have a standing army enforcing all the laws, then you are necessarily never at peace.
Since the Civil War, because that's obviously a case of imperial expansion. That's not self-governance. And so you have the problem where we are not and have not been a republic for a very long time.
Shoot.
We in no way, shape, or form meet.
Oren just DM'd me. Hold on. Time out. Hold on. I'll put on music so you guys don't put my head on a pike. There you go. There's the music. Drew, I'm still here. I just, Oren replied to my tweet, so I have to check my work schedule for Monday. Or replied to my DM, so I have to check my work schedule for Monday. How do you turn this into this? Okay, I'm coming back. Okay, I'm back. I'm back. I'm back. Hello? Oh, shoot. My camera froze again, didn't it? Crap. Damn it. Dude, I gotta get this fixed before I interview Oren. This sucks. Dude, my stream is fully frozen up. That's a crazy typo, Danny. That's a crazy typo, Danny. Wow, what a typo. What a typo, Danny, huh? I'm going to have to delete that. I got to delete that. If I don't delete that, YouTube is going to light my ass up. Oh, you deleted it. Okay, we're good. We're good. We're good. We're good. We're good. Okay, we're good. We're good. We're good. We're good. We're good. We're good. Okay.
That definition. That's scale to the problem, to the way we've had, and that's why it's so difficult to discuss the United States as a republic since the Civil War, because that's obviously a case of imperial expansion. That's not self-governance, and so you have a problem where we are not and have not been a republic for a very long time. We in no way, shape, or form meet that definition, and yet we
I forgot to do this. There we go.
continue to pretend that that's the case. If you want to go back, okay, fine, but you have to make radical changes to return to the form of a republic. And frankly, I don't think anyone is comfortable limiting the franchise down to one person per household, making it only property owners, making sure only Christians can be elected officials, making sure that only people who have done military service could vote or be elected. These are all.
This is what I was saying. If you're going to return to that, you have to disenfranchise people, right? Limiting the franchise is a better way of saying limiting the franchise.
I think you'd be surprised because we're at this place where, like in the conservative movement, all the gravity's out of the room. We're not sure where anything is going to land. You know, people like Nick Fuentes are gaining traction, and no matter what crazy things they say.
So I said earlier that the interview goes off the rails at 8:50. I was wrong. The interview goes off the rails right here.
I think it's an open ballgame for us to like make bold assertions and bold proposals for how we can restore this republic.
I think the reason.
But it has to be in the context of a return, not an acceleration to a demise and a rebuild.
A return to what?
Well, that's the debate, and I think Christian nation. I think we can have compromises on that. I think if, with federalism we can have a different we can have a patchwork of different ideas.
Here's what I see. I think there's a reason why people like Nick Fuentes, largely Nick Fuentes, are growing an audience. One, I do think it's fair to say that he's certainly moderated. Years ago he was saying shocking things for the sake of being the shocking guy. He got canceled and he went way off the deep end. Now he's trying to pull it a little bit back down, though he does say things that are still by many off the rails. But he's aggressive, and I think when you point out that this country has sort of let these things go, if Christianity had been stronger, or the leaders in the 1950s had been more aggressive, none of this would be happening. And so today you look at all the problems we face, and there is something that's very clear. Demographics being destiny. If you're a Christian nation and everyone's Christian, guess what? You don't have that high crime, right? If everybody was of the same moral worldview as Charlie Kirk, you don't need police anymore. No one's going to steal from each other. They're going to help each other out. You probably don't need insurance companies, because everyone will come and help build each other's home. But you need these systems. You need these...
Based. I don't want to get on the insurance thing. That's a whole nother thing. But you don't need insurance companies.
laws as you start inviting in other cultures and moral worldviews to the point where in Dearborn, Michigan, you have a problem with female genital mutilation, which is normal to them. Or you have Sharia patrols popping up in New York and other places. So then Nick Fuentes comes around and he says to these young men, look at what these people have wrought. They claim to be for America, they claim to be Christian, but they invited in infidels, blasphemers, and those people have, for your worldview, destroyed the fabric of your nation.
Yep.
We should reverse that. And they say, he's correct.
Yep.
So then, what is the solution?
I don't see that as. I mean, Nick Fuentes is not the first person to say that, though. I mean, Rush Limbaugh was saying that in the 90s. I mean, Rush Limbaugh was a populist. He was talking about, Chamber of Commerce conservatives who are married to the corporations who are bringing in immigrants because they care more about the Dow and the GDP than they care about American citizens.
That was Buchanan, but Limbaugh was saying it in the 90s. But that was a Buchanan thing. And also, my book that I recommend to anybody who's interested in getting into politics, who's never really looked into politics but wants to get into it, the thing I recommend they read is Ship of Fools. And there's a whole chapter on that. It's very good.
This is nothing like Nick Fuentes is the problem is nothing new, and Nick Fuentes is not the first person to address it. And Nick Fuentes too. The thing that I've been warning about with him is that he just had this. There's this video going around now where he's calling for the America First right to unite with the left, give up the free market, and the left can give up on immigration so that we can have an ethnically homogenous country again that is also socialist.
Because he's an economic leftist,
right?
And I think he's always been. I don't think
that is absolute slavery. And that's the thing that I think MAGA has gotten away from it a little bit. Because we're so disillusioned with how capitalism has exploited people and corporations have gotten too big and powerful. I understand all that. But if we give our freedom, our economic freedom away to the government, I mean that is not become slaves.
Not if you have a Christian government of true Christian virtue. This is the thing about.
I don't think that's true. And I also think that Joel's definition of socialism is much too broad. I think that Joel and the Babylon Bee and his side of the debate would define most of the things that the popes say in the social encyclicals as, I think he would define these things as socialist, you know. I really do think he would define them as socialist. There's a great quote in here in Quadragesimo that I love. It is true indeed that a just freedom of action should be left to individual citizens and families, but this principle is only valid as long as the common good is secure and no injustice is entailed. The duty of rulers is to protect community and its various elements, and in protecting the rights of individuals, they must have special regard for the infirm and the needy. For the richer classes have many ways of shielding themselves and stand less in need of help from the state, whereas the mass of the poor have no resources of protection. What? I skipped a page. Of no resources of their own to fall back upon and must chiefly depend upon the assistance of the state. And for this reason, wage earners, since they mostly belong to that class, should be especially cared for and protected by the government. I think that Joel would find that to be inside of his umbrella of socialism. But yeah, the operative quote, the big one there is, "It is true indeed that a just freedom of action should be left to individual citizens and families, but this principle is only valid as long as the common good is secure and no injustice is entailed." And this flows right into, the church's doctrine of the common destination of all goods, that you have private property, but you have private property for the purpose of treating it as common property and treating it as the property of all. I think the quote from the compendium of Catholic social teaching, I think it's 177, if I remember right. I think it's paragraph 177. Christian tradition has never recognized the right to private property as absolute and untouchable. On the contrary, it is always understood that this right within the broader context of the right of common to all, of the context of the right common to all to the use of goods of the whole of creation. The right to private property is subordinated to the right to common use, to the fact that the goods are meant for everyone. The principle of universal destination of goods is an affirmation both of God's full perennial lordship over every reality and of the requirement that the goods of creation remain ever destined to the development of the whole person and all of humanity. This principle is not opposed to the right of private property, but indicates the need to regulate it. Private property is, in fact, regardless of the concrete forms of the regulation and juridical norms relative to it, is in its essence only an instrument for respecting the principle of the universal destination of goods in the final analysis. Therefore, it is not an end, but a means. I think Joel would define that as socialist. Is my chat dead? Somebody send something in chat. Make sure that everybody's there. I think my chat died. Oh, it's there. Okay.
About demographics and destiny is that, as I mentioned, if everyone in this country had the moral worldview of Charlie Kirk, you'd need no police. No one had a problem tithing back in the day. It was something they looked forward to doing. In fact, they'd go to their church. They tithe literally, was it 10%? Would go to the church, which was a communal effort. And if this country was, this is utopian thinking, but let's just say, let's move off utopian, take 95% legitimate Christian moral worldview, church going every Sunday. Yeah. When the politicians are all of the same moral virtue, and they say, your money will... There's no problem. Everybody would be happy with it, and there'd be no dissent. The problem is,
I disagree. And the reason is we can look at 18th century Europe. Great Britain was Christian. They had a Christian king. Everyone there was Christian. Most of the European countries were Christian or Catholic or Protestant. There was still slavery. There was still tyranny. They were still all murdering and killing each other. The lower class was still infected with syphilis and getting drunk and addicted to alcohol and gambling.
This was after liberalism, though, right? 19th century is after liberalism. This is once we have the absolute right to rule, right? Like, this is post-liberalism. This is firmly in the area of modernity. He's blaming modernity on the church, which is fair because as Andrew, let me pull up this banger video. This banger video. I don't know who made this video. Whoever edited this video. I don't know who edited this video, but whoever did it was
talking about
like
old age and
whoever edited this was so good at their job. Was super cool, probably very good looking too.
Medieval Christendom wasn't invaded. There wasn't, their space aliens didn't land. It wasn't an outside force. Like, Christendom did this to itself. Christendom did modernity. No one else did it.
Christendom did modernity, right?
I don't know, but I think that history, church history.
So Jones says, and he says this, he kind of goes and expands on this, that Christendom did modernity itself. Modernity is like a fall of the church. But to blame these things on Christianity or on like Christian societies is like crazy. It doesn't make any sense, right? It's just like you're looking at something post-liberalism, like you're looking at a firmly liberal society and then blaming it on Christianity.
I think that's
the problems were still there.
I think that's a statement not of Christian moral values, though. I mean, you certainly would be suggesting that those people were true Christians.
Well, no, but that's the thing. We're never going to have this magical
Which is
scenario.
why I said it's usually
Okay, here's the other problem, right? So Joel is required because you can't just say, well, that's liberalism. That's Christians living in a liberal society. That's liberalism, because Joel can't just say that, right? He has to say that they're not real Christians. He has to redefine what it means to be a Christian.
Exactly.
My point is, the challenge is, will you ever actually have a nation of 300 million people that literally follow the teachings of Christ and go to church every weekend? No.
And that's why.
That's why you shouldn't have nations that size.
You know, when it comes to our laws, our Constitution, the kind of the mission statement set out in the Declaration of Independence, even at the founding of the country, not everyone conformed to that. Not everyone was a virtuous person. Not everyone was a true Christian. Any more than, I like to use this example. When God gave Moses the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai, what happened? Moses came down the mountain, and the Israelites were all dancing around a golden calf, committing horrific acts and idolatry. So, the fact that the Israelites failed to live up to the law of God in that moment did not make that law any less relevant or any less important that it be established and people be expected to live up to it. These are transcendent moral truths. And people are shaped by law and people are bound by law. It's a circle. People make the laws, but laws also make the people.
The principal point here, with going back to Nick Fuentes, making his arguments for some kind of economic leftist policy, is he is saying, if you are of my faction and you see the world morally the way I do, you will be happy when we are in control of the finances of the degenerates.
Yep.
And that's largely how Islam treats their countries, that if you are, in many of these Islamic nations, if you are not a Muslim, you pay tax. I forgot what it's called, but
The jizya.
Is that what it's called? Yeah. So, okay, we give you money because we don't believe what you believe, but they can then use that money as they see fit.
And it's all a lie. I mean, we have that. I bring back Rush Limbaugh again. Remember, he always used to tell the story of the first Thanksgiving, how the pilgrims came over, the Puritan white European pilgrims came over in their small community. They tried socialism at first. They tried.
Yep, but it wasn't socialism. But they tried a form of highly economically controlled liberalism. It's still liberalism. These are anachronistic terms which do not apply.
We're going to do communism. It's all going to go in a community pot. And the Christian Puritans, they got lazy and resentful and bitter towards each other, and they almost starved to death. That is socialism, even in a white, ethnically homogeneous culture.
But I think the point that Nick is either intentionally or inadvertently saying is, look at all of these people who are sick degenerates. We are going to control a portion of their revenue towards our moralistic ends. So imagine it more so with the Puritans coming over, bickering amongst themselves. Sure, but what if they all came together and said, no. Amongst ourselves, we do as we please, but we're going to take all of the extra resources from those around us to our ends.
Yeah.
So I don't know anything about Nick Fuentes' financial
To be fair, neither do I.
ideology. Like, I literally have absolutely no idea. But going off of what you guys said, obviously, I don't think we should be uniting with the left over this. However, the question, and this is always the problem with looking at Fuentes, the same thing's happening with Mamdani, right? All these people, how could you follow Mamdani? How could you believe in the socialism? How could you follow Nick Fuentes? How could you believe in these things? Well, obviously, because what we're doing right now is not working. Now, you can say what we're doing right now is not real capitalism, and it's got all these other issues, and yeah, absolutely, I'm here.
It's not real capitalism. It wasn't real communism. I'm not saying Oren's making that point, but that always amused me. It's not real capitalism. That always amuses me because people will say that. It's crony capitalism. This isn't real capitalism. It's crony capitalism. It's like, oh, good grief.
With you.
Or because people are suckers for snake oil, too. I think there's a little bit of that.
But just to
I didn't
interject,
quite get to that point.
Sorry.
don't forget what you're about to say. I just want to add on the Mamdani thing. It's exactly as it's read. Mamdani says, vote for me and I will steal from them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so the underlying question is not, are people embracing socialism? I don't think they actually are. Mamdani got elected because a bunch of third worlders got moved into New York. The people voting for him are either the most radical liberal white people or immigrants who came to New York.
But I'll stress the point. These white liberal college 30, former college debt 35-year-olds, they're voting for Mamdani not for socialism. They're voting because they say, I can't afford a house and boomers have 3 and Mamdani's going to take their stuff and give it to me.
Right.
We don't care what his ideology is, just let's go to war, baby.
Right. But Islam, socialism, it's the ideology of give me the stuff. I'm here, you have the stuff, give me the stuff. Trying to give it some kind of Marxist academic, no, they don't care. They're not sitting there flipping through Das Kapital and being, this is the reference point. No, you have stuff, and the system's not working for me right now, so give me the stuff. The same thing with Fuentes. You have a scenario where whether you agree with a lot of what he says, which I don't, but whether you agree with it or not, what he's addressing is a crowd of people who have been destroyed. They have seen the system fail for them. And all conservatives do is turn to them and say, well, I guess you better pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Figure it out, buck up, buttercup. And don't get me wrong, tough love is important, especially young men. You do have to work hard. You can't sit there and expect everyone to give it to you. You do have to have the work ethic. But when they see a situation where corporations are buying up homes, making it impossible for people to get into, where
All right, boys, do you want this live? I don't think I'm going to do it live. Are we going to do it live? Do you guys want to do it live? I got the confirmation. Are we doing it live? I don't think we should do it live. Should we do it live? I really think it should pre-record. I think we should pre-record it. There are 6 people watching. I really think it should pre-record. Oh, he's typing. Hold on. I don't want to do it live. I really don't want to do it live. Could you do it Tuesday after? Might be good. Yeah, because then I don't have to edit it. And I don't have to think about posting it. But then if my camera screws up or something, I've got a problem. I think I should pre-record it. I should pre-record it. Yeah, I'm going to pre-record it. We're nailing down a time, but it is going to happen. We're nailing the time down. I think it should pre-record. I think we're going to pre-record. Just nailing the time down.
Where illegals are coming in, taking the job. H-1Bs are replacing American workers, where especially white American men find it impossible to get into colleges because they are specifically illegally discriminated against. When they see all of these things happen, and conservative Inc. has no answers for them. Zero.
Do you really think that?
Yes, absolutely. If they had answers, we wouldn't be here, Joel. These people have been in charge of the movement for 30, 40 years.
Thank you. This is so true. They don't have... They are part of the problem.
All of these problems are still, we just got to the point where we're allowed to acknowledge anti-white discrimination like 3 years ago, where a conservative would come out and say that, and say, actually, we need to take action against that. That just happened. So if we had a successful conservative movement for 30 years, why did we just start talking about this issue? And if you pretend like we had an effective conservative movement, then you're just fooling yourself. That you're doing yourself, I get it. You don't want people following Nick Fuentes, me neither. But you have to be honest about where the conservative movement is and what it's done, because if you are not, these people will leave you for him every single time.
I also want to stress a very, very important...
This is another thing, right? Like, I have problems with Nick. Everyone knows this. But you can't... Like, the reason that people go to Nick is because people are not honest about the problems. Like when you get on the internet and you say like, and you get on the internet, right? And you say like, oh, this isn't a problem because this problem isn't real, or you're not really experiencing this, or like you are making this worse, or this is your own fault. So like, It's so stupid. It will make them less likely to listen, and it's also lying to them.
Issue when it comes to politics that people don't seem to keep in the front of their minds. Nick Fuentes' audience is not going to change. These are young people. As they were growing up, they saw something. Nick made several statements about what he was seeing and what his proposals were, and young people followed him as he was in their peer group. When we look at the shifting demographics, people often assume that there's some 35-year-old guy who is a laissez-faire capitalist who one day woke up, read Das Kapital, and said, I gotta be a socialist. When in reality, that 35-year-old guy, 10 years later, is still the exact same guy he always was. His views have shifted very little, and the 10-year-old is now 20, and he was raised from the age of 10 to be a socialist at the age of 20. This is why Charlie Kirk fought so hard for high schools and colleges. The turning point because he knew you've got to introduce him to these ideas at a young age.
Right.
Now, how old is Nick? He's late 20s?
I don't know.
I don't know how old he is, but
25.
27. There's going to be Gen Z is about to turn 30. This debate is not going to change their minds because they have 20 years of education, knowledge, and interpretation of history and political facts. The question now is, how are you going to convince Gen Alpha, which is only 42 million, to believe in what you are saying?
Specifically, what are you?
My point is, the change.
That's actually. Did Tim Pool just make a really good point? That's crazy. Wild. That's a really good point.
Change that is coming with Nick and whoever else is it's going to happen no matter what. You can't change it. It can't be stopped. This change was set in motion 10 years ago. And it's really fascinating to think, actually, 10 years ago, Donald Trump walking down the escalator, right? Not that, how old are you, Joel?
39.
39?
41.
41. I'm also 39. We're in our late 20s watching all that go down. And now it's kind of crazy to see that people in our age group, as naturally as it is, start taking over positions of power, start coming into corporate positions. And we see this even with wokeness. Boomers have a very similar ideology to each other. This was true in the 90s. The arguments between them was very light. And that's why a lot of boomers left the Republican Party and became Democrats. And we now see these old neocons, crotchety neocons, are basically Democrats at this point because they always had this very similar view. And it's largely a pro-Israel view. As you get younger, it starts splitting more and more.
Right.
So the important distinction right now is we can certainly talk about the politics we want to be in place. But the conversation we're having is how are we going to create a unified message for Generation Alpha, who are about 15 years old. Yeah. So in 3 years, when Gen Alpha starts voting, which is pretty crazy, they're going to largely agree with what we want.
Okay, so I think I laid it out at the very beginning, my little diatribe here. I laid out kind of all the problems that I don't think I left much out. I mean, I addressed pretty much everything that Nick Fuentes has been addressing, right? Mm-hmm. Cost of living, the disenfranchisement of young white men, all this stuff. Charlie was a great example for us. And, he was always going back to and pointing people to Christ and the gospel. Mm-hmm. That's our way out of this. And I think we saw like a beautiful glimpse of it at his funeral service. We saw forgiveness. We saw worship. We saw devotion. We saw hope. We saw boldness in speaking the truth from a national stage. The answer to all of this is not in, the right tactics, seizing the right halls of power. It has to be a ground up spiritual revival, and that's something that you can't manufacture, which is what makes this answer so hard.
Well, yes and no, right? Like, so at some level, the football team wins because it is a bunch of guys supporting each other, sharing the same goal, working together, right? Like they have to have that. They have to have that baseline understanding, those shared values. But at some point, there is a mechanical.
The football team wins because Kurt Signetti is the coach and Fernando Mendoza is the quarterback. Go Hoosiers. Hoosiers. Yeah. What are you gonna? Sorry, I'll stop. By the way, the Dominican chaplains, Kurt's Coach Sig is Catholic, and the Dominican chaplains sit with his wife at games. So, if you want to root against the Dominicans, that's on you. Excuse me.
Mechanical way in which the football team wins. Right. There is actually a specific set of steps that are tactically correct, strategically correct, need to be applied. You need to understand the mechanisms of how the game works and where your advantages are. You need both.
You have Joker 2, and when you have 4 verts, your seam beater is going to have an open shot over the top. Now, that's only true if Fernando Mendoza is your quarterback and he can make that throw, which luckily for the Indiana Hoosiers, he is. I'm not going to stop.
Yes, but you can't sit there and say it's just this. Now, don't get me wrong. Christ above all, right? Like ultimately, Christ is the answer to everything. We're going to agree on that all day long. Yes. Right? But at some point, Christ has us doing things, right?
Yes.
Like Christ may bless your mission, but then you've got to go build the thing and do the thing, right?
Yes, and that was there's a great debate between David French and Eric Metaxas exactly on this issue, because David French, one of the reasons he lost his way is because he kind of had his Christian faith that he wanted to keep in this like pristine little case in this ivory tower, untarnished and untainted by the filth of the world. And Eric Metaxas is like, no, we are Christians. We need to live in the world, and we need to apply our
The church is a hospital for the wounded.
Christianity in politics every way we can. That was the big divide over Donald Trump. Could Christians support Donald Trump? And I voted for Donald Trump all 3 times, and it was a compromise as a Christian. I was making a calculation that I was voting for a guy that maybe had some questionable morals, and I didn't agree with on everything. But it was my responsibility as a Christian to vote for him because of the alternatives and because of what he represented. And we're still having this debate on the right. But I think what concerns me a little bit about what I see in your approach, Arn, is it and maybe this is just perception for me because we're all online and we all just see what we put online. Your emphasis on guys like Schmidt, Machiavelli, Land, Yarvin, these guys, the overemphasis on kind of like the nihilistic tactics, the realpolitik, at the expense of spiritual reality. It's I get it. I see the use for it, but I think it's imbalanced. I understand Scripture is not a political textbook, but I think that as Christians, Scripture should be at the center of everything.
I think it is. I think Scripture is a political textbook. Another great political textbook that you can read. Catholic Social Teaching Collection, Word on Fire. Great book. What are you guys going to do about it? I'm just going to keep pushing it. Who's going to stop me? Nobody. Oh, shoot.
Be at the center of everything. We should be citing it. We should be looking to it all the time. And I think it has some incredible wisdom for us in how we conduct politics.
But I want to try and understand what you're saying. Is the argument that Oren's view is more based on the application of power from groups willing to enforce their worldview versus the truth that should just be?
Yeah, well, it's almost like Lord of the Rings versus Game of Thrones. Lord of the Rings, there's our deities, there's transcendent moral truth, there's kind of a cosmic reality above it all. Game of Thrones is just germs in a petri dish fighting it out. It's just animals.
Well, I view them both very, very similar. I mean, obviously they're fighting it out. But
the question is, what reality do we actually live in? So realpolitik is not actual reality, because in reality, God exists and objective moral truth exists, and we have to account for that and acknowledge that everywhere we go and in everything we do, especially as Christians. And the prime example of this, the big failure that I've seen on the right in tactics and in morals, has been this no enemies to the right thing that has become such a big part of the conversation over the last couple of years. Charles Haywood kind of coined this term, no enemies to the right, and the idea being, for the sake of tactics, for the sake of uniting against the left, we need to hold our peace when it comes to calling out evil or wickedness or bad ideas on the right. And after we defeat the left, we can have these conversations. It's all good, but we need to keep our mouths shut. No enemies to the right. And what it did, and what I saw over the next couple of years, is that if you follow that all the way down, for one, it's very nihilist. It can almost turn you into this kind of twisted moral monster. And it's the exact same thing that Marxists do. So Marxists they look at everything in terms of oppressed versus oppressor. And so what they end up doing, and you see it all the time, is if wickedness is done by someone who is oppressed, they will...
Hold on. I'm not following this at all. Hopefully he has an actual argument for this, because just saying like having no enemies to the right is the same thing as oppressed oppressor. That's going to be really interesting. But here we go.
Defend that wickedness because it's coming from someone who's oppressed. And the same thing on the right. If we have no enemies to the right, what you end up seeing all the time is someone defending wickedness because it's coming from someone who is on the right, who's supposed to be your friend.
Will you condemn James Lindsay? For what? For no enemies to the
Yeah, we're gone now.
right. Well, he's certainly at odds with your moral worldview, destructive to its ends, and aligning with him has caused you problems. Will you say this guy's bad? We should not be working with him.
Is that a copy of NASCAR 25 for the PS5 back there? Why is that up there? That's really weird. That's weird in a funny way, but it is funny. NASCAR 25.
We should be, first of all, he's not a Christian. He's a polyamorous liberal who has been putting out false arguments to make your argument fall apart.
Yeah.
And I think, not you personally, but I've seen this faction of individuals intentionally align with him because it grants them power and they want to use it.
Well, I'll tell you what I think. James Lindsay has shot himself in the foot a little bit with this kind of over-application of the woke right term.
Yeah, I think once he started calling Orthodox pro-Israel Jews woke right, jump the shark.
I guess I want to finish my train of thought with him, because at a core level, I do appreciate what he's doing, even though he shoots himself in the foot and he's really good at making enemies. He is a freedom-first guy. He cares about preserving freedom, and so do I. When it comes to his faith, he's not an atheist anymore. He's at least agnostic, and I'm praying for his conversion. He's been reading the Bible a lot, and I won't say any more about him because I don't know. But this is one thing I'll say. The last time I was with James Lindsay, it was at a libertarian convention. A bunch of godless libertarians. No offense. At one point, he had done his presentation. Someone asked a question during the Q&A, like, how do we save this country? And he said, the only way I see for us to save this country is for you to get back into your Bible, find a church, and go to church, and pray earnestly for our country.
Yeah, but Dawkins says the same thing. That doesn't make him a Christian. That doesn't make him an ally.
And he wasn't pandering. This wasn't a crowd of evangelicals.
Once again, friendship has to be based on friendship has to be substantive. It has to be based on communal values.
So he wasn't pandering. He was talking to a bunch of godless libertarians. And so my point is, I don't agree with Lindsay on everything, obviously, but I will unite with a guy who tells people that our hope is Scripture, church, and prayer, over a professed Christian who says, Hitler was cool, 15-year-olds or all the stuff, all the nasty stuff.
Okay, so here's the thing, and Tim's making this point, and this is where Joel can't answer this, is that Nick says that same thing, but he's saying that these things Nick says are so much worse than the things that James says. So what he's really, that's what he's really saying, right? These are there's like a line that you can't cross or you can't be allied with, and you can't, if you cross that line, like, bye, you're not in the movement anymore. And insisting that you're allying with him for a different reason is not helpful and is dishonest.
Nick Fuentes said, or a professed Christian who says...
I reject this. James Lindsay is the other side of the coin for Nick Fuentes in this argument. You are overlooking the things he does that is destructive to you because he said things that benefits you. And there are many people who would say similarly of Nick, perhaps Tucker Carlson. I don't want to put words in his mouth. But while certainly Nick has said a bunch of abhorrent things, like you mentioned, saying Hitler, Stalin, all these guys, there are a lot of people saying, no enemies to the right. Well, at least he is a Christian, and at least he is espousing that message. He's not a Christian. And young men are following it. Neither is James Lindsay, but you would be willing to unite with a guy.
It's like there's some kind of friend-enemy distinction. Political coalitions. Look, so...
Yeah, what are you going to do? That is funny. What are you going to do? Can't argue with that one. That one's funny.
I mean, I want to make this one important point on the issue I take with. I see these. I don't know how you want to describe the faction of people that are more in your camp. I believe James Lindsay opposes your worldview and is trying to destroy it. I believe that his
that worldview
Christianity,
being what? He's
Christianity
trying to destroy Christianity
and conservatism.
I disagree.
This is a man whose entire body of work is infiltrating groups and
Tim, this is a really good point for Tim too.
presenting arguments that make them look retarded. And he's doing that to you right now, and you're going along with it because there is some benefit you receive. So ignoring all the destructive things he's done, he's cost you allies, he's created enemies, and he's dismantled your own arguments, which is literally what he's done on the left now to you. And you're like, well, but he said some things that are beneficial to me, so I'll keep it.
What and maybe I'm just naive, but I see someone who is standing up for what he believes in at great cost to himself. He's kind of lost everything.
You're saying no enemies to the right in the exact same way.
How do you mean?
This argument, no enemies to the right, means people who are aligned with us enough we should not attack. And you're saying this of James Lindsay, who is the antithesis and has exhibited. I'm going to say this bare point again because it's fascinating to me. When I was talking with Scott Horton about this, and I said, James Lindsay hates Israel. And he was like, what are you talking about? No, he defends it all the time. And I'm like, you just tweeted that he was your secret agent helping you dismantle this argument pro-Israel. James Lindsay goes to the left, makes and presents false arguments that they utilize and look like idiots. He's quite literally, as a liberal, polyamorous guy, doing the same thing to you, but you're falling for it the same way leftist academics. He's never been conservative. He's never liked the Marxists. He wants traditional social liberalism, and he's attacking the enemies of it to the point where he said, I should be the leader. And our true enemy is national conservatism. And he's called, my favorite example, Mary Morgan, woke right. Mary is a pop culture commentator that works here at Timcast. She does a show about video games, movies, and actresses, and even she's woke right. He has made you look like fools over and over again. Now, I know he's not saying that he likes Hitler or anything like that, but the absurdity of his comments is destructive to your political lens, and you can't see it. When I see someone say no enemies to the right and they're willing to align with Fuentes, I see in a different way, very similarly to your willingness to align with James Lindsay.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I think I'm not a subscriber of no enemies to the right. I think that I will unite with people. Dave Rubin is another example that always gets brought up. He's gay and he bought surrogate babies. You're a Christian. How could you unite with this guy? I don't know Dave Rubin. I've never done anything with him. And you've talked about this too, Arn. We choose our friends, allies, and co-belligerents differently. Sometimes we have co-belligerents that we don't agree with on everything, but politically, they are kind of on our side for what we're pushing for politically. James Lindsay, I see.
I think that when you're speaking in the Schmittian sense, if you're gonna, I don't like the word friend because it's not precise enough, right? It's not substantive. It's privative. But co-belligerent, I think, is an okay term. Like, I think it's okay to have co-belligerent be a privative term, right? Shared enemy.
As someone who is calling out an anti-liberty, a growing anti-liberty movement on the right. He called it out when it was on the left.
But he's not. And again, this is the point. Sorry to interrupt, but he called me a Marxist plant. He tweeted at Carl Benjamin, it's not my job to educate you. His modus operandi has always been infiltrate.
At some point, you have to care. Like, you can't just pretend like, oh, it's fine. And really, honestly, this is the most boring topic ever. Like, James isn't here to defend himself, and I don't want to spend a ton of time going on. But I agree with what you're saying. But like, it's just the most. Yeah.
My final point on this is largely just, again, I agree. We don't need to talk about some guy. But if the subject matter in this debate of Nick Fuentes as a particular individual, there are other elements of I am willing to defend abhorrent people who are destructive if it suits my ends.
Yeah, you can't pretend that it's all on one side. And again, Nick Fuentes has lied about me maliciously. I have no love for Nick Fuentes at all. But you just can't pretend like the bad behavior is one direction. But again, this really gets back to the.
So do you guys actually put James Lindsay on the same plane as Nick Fuentes in terms of like how loathsome and wicked they are?
I don't know. Of course, it will depend on the issue. So, for instance,
James is worse. Obviously, James is worse.
how bad is buying children from their mother? Like, I know, but since you brought up Dave Rubin, like,
Dave is worse. Obviously, Dave is worse.
where does that, on the scale of moral, is that above a Nick Fuentes?
It's wicked and it should be outlawed.
No, but it has to be placed. So, like, if we're placing it, is it Nick Fuentes is saying bad things?
Right.
Dave Rubin is separating children from their mother. Which one is worse?
Okay, so again, I draw a line between how someone conducts themselves in their life, in their personal life, versus what they're saying in the message.
There is no such thing as a personal life, especially when it's kidnapping children. Oh my gosh. This guy's retarded. You can't just kidnap children, dude, and then be like, well, it's his private life. He's not promoting it publicly, which is what he's going to go on to say, right? He's going to go on and, like, they're going to do 45 minutes circling about this, about how, like, I don't know if Dave Rubin promotes it publicly. He did it. He doesn't think it should be wrong. He's a public figure who stole children. That's promotion. End of discussion. Is that worse than saying mean things? Yes. This is not hard. Oh my gosh. Oh shoot. I fucked up my camera again. I know exactly what I'm doing to mess the camera up now, though. Luckily, I just figured it out, so that's good. We're not getting through this whole interview.
It's just that they're promoting. So, for example, I don't defend Trump in his adult republic. They want to destroy it.
See, we already talked about it.
Hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt you. For 70 years, the United States has been operating under what's called the liberal economic order that you seek to topple. You are advocating for a revolution from that system.
Are you talking about like the post-war order?
It's the CFR calls it the liberal economic order, the establishment of the World Bank, the IMF, international.
I didn't even write the joke. I didn't even know what had gone up.
Of someone a Nazi falsely is intended to mark them as an enemy of the faction.
Correct.
The next, won't someone rid me of this Melson priest?
Right.
And then someone goes and does it.
Believe in a God who rules the universe, who is on the throne, who used Gideon's 300 men to defeat an army.
first, but nobody died in this conflict, save for one person. It was an accident. After Fort Sumter happened, the perception in the United States was still
Christians.
That was
I agree with you. And then we firebombed Tokyo and Dresden, and then we dropped several.
successfully succeeded. It would not necessarily be more or less good, morally good, or otherwise.
Had the Confederacy
Is it a greater good that the Union won, or would you have seen a person in the country was like, we're not currently in a war? Then you get the first battle. Do you think Abraham Lincoln did the right thing?
when he did what? Hopefully going to be trying to save this country. I am not willing.
Would be fantastic.
But once, won't someone rid me of this meddlesome priest?
Right.
And a more extreme example. Democrats for months now have been falsely claiming that Donald Trump's military orders are illegal.
Right.
Then they come out and
Movement is pagan. Okay, I think that Christians can join evil movements, and I think that
and what is the argument against Nick?
has done bad things. You know,
My point is, when you refer to someone as an evildoer, is their principal motivation, it is their character. If you call all
movement they're pushing.
all people have fallen short, but some people do better than others. Some people intentionally fall short and actually seek.
It's not uniting with him or working with him.
Do you believe that the actions that Dave Rubin
Didn't bring up specifically disagreeing with his choice of purchasing children.
I think we've all seen enough. Donald the values of
And when you
the anti-God, anti-Christian values of the
now
left.
that's your particular view, but when you then look at Hassan Piker and he's called woke because he's defending blindly Ukraine as a component of their political party, that certainly isn't aligning with Marxist ideology. And so the question then becomes, what is everyone identifying?
I agree with him. I mean, like,
You don't agree with him that there's anti-white bigotry?
okay, yeah, I do. I mean,
That seems like an easy one.
So you unite with him on that front then. Such a thing is far beyond anything Nick has ever done. And by all means, if you want to point out, here's where we draw more lines, here's my issue, totally fine. Again, I
wanna
see where you're
note
saying
how
I'm willing
much
to
I
accept these
just
truths and you
skipped,
making
and they're
excuses
still
why something
talking about the
is
same
incorrect.
thing.
I'll try to say this again. There's a difference between uniting with someone who is a sinner who's done bad things in his personal life for a good cause, and uniting with a good person or someone who believes all the right things on paper for an evil cause. And that's the way I see this. I think Nick represents an evil movement and an evil cause, regardless of how he behaves in his personal life. Dave Rubin, I don't know enough about his politics. I've never really interacted with him.
But he doesn't receive the ire of your faction of conservatives the way Nick does.
If Dave Rubin was a constitutional conservative who cares about American freedom and preserving the Constitution, I will unite with him for that cause, in spite of what I
You can unite with Nick on specific issues that you agree with him on.
I don't see anything I agree with him. I mean, like,
You don't agree with him that there's anti-white bigotry?
okay, yeah, I do. I mean,
That seems like an easy one.
So you can unite with him on that front then. And you guys can come together and
That we should do mass
if
deportations.
you consider saying the same things as him, uniting with him, then yes. But I don't.
Nobody's here. What do you expect? Do you think we're putting him in your backpack that you're just going home for dinner? Like, no one's here saying like,
Gosh, Joel.
hey man, you gotta go have beers with Nick. You have to, you need to go. Like, just saying the people who are trying to kill us are the enemy right now.
I'll put it like
Let's
this.
actually focus on them, and then we can come back around and be like, maybe this guy isn't saying things we want
we
to
do got to wrap, so I'll just say one more thing, and then I'll let whoever wants the last word. Megyn Kelly and Dave Rubin do content together all the time. She does not lambast him over the issue that he hired a woman to birth children.
About gay people picking.
About Megyn Kelly nearly.
atheist who doesn't see of how politics is.
This is the point. It doesn't matter if Dave's right or wrong or Megyn's right or wrong. The point is there's a clear focus to your intent, and I don't know. And that's it. Like, okay,
My focus is preserving American liberty. You know, that's my focus. You know, Nick doesn't represent that, and so I won't unite with him. I think that's fair.
So something we didn't get to do here enough, which hopefully maybe we can later, because I think it'd be far more productive. The personalities, all that stuff. I think
such a red herring.
it gets us stuck in. You said this, we did that. But the more important thing is, I would like you to take the time to look at actual critiques of kind of where the conservative movement is. I don't think we're far off on the ends that we want. I think the difference is that I believe we are in a different time and space than you do, and that the path back to what we want is not available the way that you are espousing it. Not because I don't agree with these ends, but because mechanically there's a poor understanding of how politics works, how dialectics works, how democracy works that is not being addressed here. This is what I go after. And Yarvin.
There it is. Common ends. Disagreement on what time it is. Disagreement on ways, power, functions, and the ends of power, and the end, and the method, and the methods needed to get to common ends. There it is.
Land, Schmidt, yeah, we mentioned all these people, but what we didn't talk about was de Maistre. We didn't talk about a lot of Christian thinkers that I draw on to talk about these exact same issues. And when you exclude those, then you're saying you're only picking certain aspects of the point. Ultimately, I think that this is a collection of thinkers that helps us to look at the situation we're in and find solutions. Even though I radically disagree on, like, Yarvin, he's an atheist who doesn't see Christianity as central.
You agree with him on feudalism?
What do you mean on feudalism? He doesn't agree with feudalism.
I mean, he kind
We
of.
got to wrap.
Okay.
Sorry, guys. We're just
But this is what
No! Gosh, I got mad when I watched this the first time, dude. I was mad about that.
this is what I actually wanted to talk about, and not James Lindsay. Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
Anyway.
Okay. I think there's so much confusion that can be kind of inserted into a situation when you bring up personalities and conflating two different things. I guess I'll just kind of reiterate my point that I think that ultimately I do think there's a way back. I think that our hope is in Christ and in Christianity, not an empty tradition, ritual, government-sponsored religion, but real devoted, actual Christianity, the kind that we saw at Charlie Kirk's funeral. I think that there is hope. I think there's no reason to blackpill. And I think that here's
Well, I agree with him on that. Don't blackpill.
the thing. We get so tied up in strategy and tactics. I think it really is as simple as be in God's word, try to understand the truth to the best of your ability, try to speak the truth to the best of your ability, and refuse to budge. Refuse to budge. And if enough people are courageous to stand in what's right, to stand in the truth, then we'll win this. That's
Where
what
can people find you?
Find me on Babylon Bee. You can find me on Twitter, Joel W. Berry.
I think this is the populist illusion. I don't think that we reach some critical mass and then all of a sudden, no, you have to have effective leadership. You have to have effective elites. Political opinion is driven by elites, and you have to have a strategy for how to deploy these things. You can do that as a Christian. You can do that as someone who is believing in a biblical worldview. There's nothing evil or wrong with looking to use power in the way that will glorify God and bring your society closer to Him. And just because you propose that doesn't mean you're throwing away the Constitution. I think we need a much better definition of what liberty means, because I think we're using it too loosely and just saying liberty. I'm sorry, but James Lindsay does not believe in the type of liberty that Christian founders believe in. Those are not the same two things, and when you pretend that they are, you're conflating them on purpose to draw sides that don't exist. You need to drill down to these issues. That said, I'm Warren McIntyre. You can find me on place.
There you go. Well, there it is. It's very good. You should watch the rest of it if you were interested in that, or if you're interested in the James Lindsay discussion, which I was not interested in hearing a third time, but it was fine the first time. It's just not the way more interesting thing that I was hoping we would get. So there's that. What else do you guys want to do? Or do you guys want to call it? I'd be fine to call it if you guys want to call it. I think I'm going to call it because, yeah, the end is the best part. Literally, they were about to get into the most interesting stuff, which is why I want to talk to Oren, which is why we're going to talk on Tuesday, I think. So 2 p.m. would be great. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to interview Oren at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, and then I will post it as soon as possible afterwards. So it'll probably be up Tuesday evening. Tuesday evening, my interview with Oren McIntyre. Tell your friends. Tell your mom. Tell your sister. Tell your brother. Tell your dad. Tell your wife. Tell your kids. Alrighty. Cool. Y'all have a good night. I'm going to call it here just because this was all I had to talk about. This is all I prepped. This is all I had time to prep for. Maybe next week we will be doing a more in-depth discussion of Quadragesimo Anno. So if you want to read that in preparation, you guys should do that. It'll be very good. So y'all have a great night. I love you all. Say your prayers. Thank you so much for watching. And if you find this stuff helpful or interesting, please send it to your friends and family so I can grow and do more of it.